The House will come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Abby and Parker Wyrick from Windsor Charter Academy.
Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Schiebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Armagost, Bacon, Barone, Byrd, Representative Byrd,
Excused.
Basenecker, Bottoms, Bradfield, Representative Bradfield, Bradley, Rep. Bradley,
Excused.
Brooks, Brown, Caldwell, Camacho, Carter, Representative Carter,
Excused.
Clifford, Representative Clifford is excused. DeGraff, Duran, English, Espinoza, Representative Espinoza is excused. Foray, Froelich, Representative Froelich is excused. Garcia, Garcia Sander, Gilchrist, Gonzalez, Hamrick, Hartsook, Jackson, Johnson, Joseph, Kelty, Leader, Lindsay, Lindstedt, Luck, Representative Luck is excused. Lukens, Representative Lukens, Mabry, Marshall, Martinez, Morrow, McCormick, Pascal, Phillips, Puglisi. It's on the wall.
Here.
Richardson, Ricks,
Present.
Rootenell, Representative Rootenell is excused. Ryden, Sirota, Smith, Soper, Representative Soper is excused. Stewart K, Stewart R, Story, Sukla, Taggart, Titone, Valdez A, Velasco, Weinberg, Wilford, Winter, Woodrow, Woog, Zokai, Representative Zokai, and Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Schiebel. With 60 present, 5 excused, we do have a quorum. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the Journal of Tuesday, March 25th be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Members, you have heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Members, we do have business. I will invite you to take your seats. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to proceed out of order for consideration of House Resolution 1003.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for consideration of House Resolution 1003. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Resolution 1003.
House Resolution 1003 by Representatives Joseph and Espinoza, concerning the recognition of the importance of a diverse legal community in Colorado and honoring the contributions of the Colorado Women's Bar Association.
Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. Today, in honor of Women's History Month, we wanted to take a moment to celebrate women who work in the legal space in Colorado. And again, this week, in one of our bills, one of our colleagues was in the well, and she was talking about the work that women have done when it comes to pushing policy forward. I was truly inspired as I was sitting there listening to our colleague. And what reflected for me is that women has always been at the forefront of whatever issue you can think of to ensure that the entire community is safe and protected. And again, I am deeply grateful today to have the opportunity to be one of the sponsors of this particular resolution to celebrate women within our legal profession here in the state of Colorado. And I'm grateful to Judge Espinoza for all the work that she has done serving the people of Colorado. And because of her work, we are safer in our community as well. So thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, thank you to all the women who have served our community within the legal space. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Espinoza, and I will ask that one of you move the resolution as well.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would move resolution HR 1003
And would you like?
and ask that it be read in full. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schiebel, would you read our resolution, please?
Whereas the legal profession upholds the nation's values, including the rule of law, equal justice, judicial independence, accountability, excellence, advancing justice, and upholding the highest standards of the legal profession. And whereas historically, women faced significant barriers to entering the legal field, and even after admission, they have continued encountering challenges. And whereas in 1894, Jeanette Dunham Bennett and Anne Hunt became the first women to earn law degrees in Colorado, marking the beginning of women's formal entry into the state's legal profession. And whereas in 1897, the Colorado General Assembly enacted a statute ensuring that no person could be denied a license to practice law on account of race or sex, reflecting the state's early commitment to inclusivity in the legal profession. And whereas in 1903, Ida L. Gregory became Colorado's first female judge, setting a precedent for women's leadership in the judiciary. And whereas in 1917, Clara Ruth Moser was appointed as Assistant Attorney General of Colorado, becoming the first woman to serve in such a role in any American state. And whereas Gail Norton served as Colorado's Attorney General from 1991 to 1999, becoming the first woman to hold this position in the state. And whereas in 1994, Claudia J. Jordan became the first African American female judge in Colorado, further diversifying the state's judiciary. And whereas in 1997, Teresa M. Cisneros became the first Hispanic American female judge in Colorado's 4th Judicial District. And whereas in 2016, Chelsea Malone, who is of Korean descent, became the first Asian American female state judge in Colorado. And whereas in 2024, Monica M. Marquez became the first Latina and first openly gay person to serve as Chief Justice of the Colorado Supreme Court. And whereas, as of 2024, women comprise 41% of attorneys in Colorado, reflecting significant progress over the past decades. And whereas the Colorado Women's Bar Association, or CWBA, has been instrumental in promoting the advancement of women in the legal profession and advocating for a more diverse and representative legal system. And whereas the CWBA's Judicial Committee assists qualified women statewide in applying for judicial positions and openings on judicial nomination committees, encouraging the advancement of women in the judiciary and fighting bias and discrimination against women in the courtroom. And whereas the CWBA works to increase access to justice and representation in all areas of the legal system, including the judiciary. And whereas a diverse legal community enhances the quality of justice and ensures that the legal system serves all citizens effectively. And whereas March is nationally recognized as Women's History Month, a time to honor women's contributions in American history. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 75th General Assembly of the State of Colorado that we recognize the vital importance of diversity within Colorado's legal community and commend the Colorado Women's Bar Association for its unwavering commitment to supporting the advancement of women and strengthening the legal profession in our state, and that we encourage continued efforts to foster a legal environment that values merit, integrity, and the diverse perspectives of all its members, ensuring that the legal system remains fair and just for every Coloradan.
Representative Luck. Oh, Representative Espinoza.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to say part of the reason that this resolution was brought on this day is this is the birthday of Sandra Day O'Connor, who was the first woman appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court. So this seemed an appropriate day to honor the jurists and the women in our legal profession. I wanted to note, I spent last night writing notes and I can't find them, but let me just tell you what I remember from what I researched last night. One of the things that was important about Justice O'Connor, she was not only a jurist and a legal person, she was a groundbreaker in the political world as well. She was the first woman to serve as a speaker in the House of Representatives in the state of Arizona and in the country, and that was representing the state of Arizona. So like us, she was a trailblazer. And so many jurists and so many lawyers had other professions and other lives that they served with. I wanted to thank the Colorado Women's Bar Association. When I moved here in 1990 as a law professor, it was the women of the Colorado Women's Bar that helped to bring me comfort and also give me support as I endeavored in that proclamation. So CWBA is extremely important. And I also wanted to highlight to bookend in terms of that service, our current Chief Justice, Monica Marquez, who, as the resolution indicated, is often identified by her identity, the identities assigned to her. But the reality is she is a person who has deep roots in the Valley. She was raised in Grand Junction. She was an individual who served in the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. She was an individual who had leadership as the Assistant Attorney General under Ken Salazar, the Deputy Attorney General and Solicitor General under the next Attorney General. So all of us who serve in the legal profession are more than any one of our titles. And just as all of us serve as members of this body, lawyers serve their communities every day. And I wanted to recognize every lawyer for everything that they do in all of their work. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to those who were behind the drafting and putting forth of this resolution, I wanted to take this opportunity to honor a woman in law that is near and dear to my heart, a woman who mentored me when I was in law school and when I got out of law school. When she went to law school, she was one of 3 women in her class. And her professors had the habit of going back and forth in the Socratic method, asking questions between men and women. And so they were always on the hot seat. And we would talk about that because if you've been to law school or if you've seen movies about law school, you know that that hot seat can be pretty hot at times. And to constantly be on it, especially if one of your female colleagues was absent for the day, can be quite intimidating. And instead of being bitter about the experience, instead of being hostile about it, she actually just embraced it. And she was grateful for it because it sharpened her in very unique ways such that she was able to do a lot more than she thinks she would have been able to do otherwise. And I just want to honor her. I want to honor those women who experienced that and who had, walking out of that, just this heart of joy and gratitude for the challenge. I think that is noteworthy, and so I just wanted to take this time to do that.
Representative Carter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just so everyone understands, I was original sponsor for this bill, and the reason I wanted to do this bill was to give these women that's standing behind me right now their flowers while we're here. And so while I was going around talking and getting individuals to sign on to this bill, one of the people in this chamber looked at me and made me understand that I needed to get out of the way. And it's okay, and it's fine. And so what I did was I reached out to each one of these ladies, and I said, I want to make sure this chamber knows what you have done. I want to make sure that they hear your voices. Remember, going through their biographies are impressive. We have individuals who are barred in 6 different states. The individuals behind me speak 4 different languages. The individuals behind me, specifically, one of the greatest things I saw was one of them fled Hurricane Katrina, and she became a force of nature on our floor. We have assistant majority leaders. We have assistant minority leaders. We have tax attorneys. We have an impressive collection, and I'm not going to speak long. I'm not going to speak long because, like I said, I want to get out of the way, and I just want to thank each and every single one of them.
Thank you, Representative. Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Resolution 1003. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Minority Leader Puglisi, how do you vote?
Yes.
Minority Leader Puglisi votes yes. Representative Ricks, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Ricks votes yes. Representative Bradfield. Please close the machine. With 65 ayes, 0 no, 0 excused, the resolution is adopted. Co-sponsors. Representative Ricks and Minority Leader Puglisi co-sponsor. Please close the machine. Members, before we proceed to thirds, we will do announcements and introductions. Give everyone a moment to get down to the well. Representative Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As part of our resolution this morning, we also had a group of women in the law who are here in the chamber. They are friends and colleagues of Representative Carter. Please put your hands together for them. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your great work.
Thank you for being here. Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Judiciary Committee members, at 1:30 p.m. in room 107, we will be hearing only 2 bills. Can you believe it? 2 bills. Let's see if we can get out before 7 p.m. We have House Bill 1214, House Bill 1275. Please be on time.
Thank you. Representative Garcia and Representative Gilchrist.
Good morning, colleagues. We have the Family Voice Council folks here today from the Colorado Department of Human Services. If you are in the building, if you want to stand, they might not be here yet. Okay. Well, we just wanted to announce they are in the building today. They will be reaching out to you. This is a group of people that have lived experience that inform public policy in our state, particularly around human services. They're incredibly important. Their voice is incredibly important. We need people who have lived experience who can give us feedback, and they're incredibly dedicated and wonderful individuals. So if you see them today, please thank them for their service and ask them what we should do differently in our public policy.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I echo everything that my colleague just said. Also, just want to say, as they're here today, this is their day. And so I just want to encourage all of us to take a moment out of our day if they call for us just to check in and visit. And so excited that Family Voices Council continues to be strong and thrive and direct our agencies to better serve community. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I didn't sign up today.
Nope.
Boo! That's right. That's appropriate. If we gobble on concurrence, then we should do something like that whenever I don't sign up. 1:30 today, room 112, Health and Human Services will meet. We will hear 2 bills, 1297 and 85. See you there.
Thank you. Representative Story.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I did sign up by the skin of my teeth. Tomorrow, CDC will meet at 8 a.m. in Senate Committee Room 357. Please join us.
Representative Lukens.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm sorry I didn't sign up.
Thank you.
The Education Committee will be meeting in room 107 upon 10 minutes upon adjournment. We will be hearing House Bill 1278 for action only, Senate Bill 143, and Senate Bill 63.
Thank you. Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I wrote my name very small. You can see very small. Good day for members of Energy and Environment. There will not be any committee today, but it is not a great day for Mother Earth. She didn't get hers. See you later.
Representative Woodrow.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, the House Business Affairs and Labor Committee will be meeting 10 minutes upon adjournment in room 112 to hear House Bill 1300.
Thank you. Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There are many pastors in the room with us today. The Pastors Informational Group is here, and they're going to be having a luncheon and some other things. And so some are down on the floor, some are up top. So let's hear it from my peeps.
Seeing no further announcements, members, we will move on to third readings. I will invite you to take your chair. Madam Majority Leader. Oh, no. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1236.
House Bill 1236 by Representatives Lindsay and Zokai, also Senator Weissman, concerning the screening of a prospective residential tenant by a landlord.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1236 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1236 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members. Thank you, Representative. Representative Woog. And folks, if I miss you, please wave before I get too far along and we miss the opportunity to speak. Also invite you to be in the well if you're planning to speak. Thank you, Representative Woog. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just want to urge a no vote on this bill. So this landlord-tenant bill is talking about prospective tenants using a housing subsidy. So this is actually going to influence many landlords probably to not even accept tenants with housing subsidies anymore, because it's putting them in a situation, it's creating a bigger liability. The landlord in certain circumstances won't be able to ask for like a credit check from a third-party source, which they normally do. The prospective tenant can give them their own report, which could certainly have been changed. So in their favor, it might be a fraudulent report. So this just really puts the landlord in a bad spot. So once again, I think this is going to create uncertainty, and landlords might no longer, a lot of them will probably no longer take prospective tenants that are getting a housing subsidy. So again, as I have said over and over again, this probably creates higher rents, and it's actually going to shrink the market for those tenants that are relying on housing subsidies. So now there's less properties for them to rent, possibly creating more homelessness. So this bill really is going to hurt the people that it is talking about. It's going to help. It absolutely will. I strongly urge a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Barone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand up here and against this bill. It's coming off of the debate yesterday. This is another one of 19 anti-landlord bills that are coming through this House today, this year. To be able to get a good credit check on somebody that's going to be renting your property that you invested money in, and in most occasions, like mine, it's family investment. It's a family investment that we did to help produce a product for somebody that, in some occasions, can't qualify for a mortgage, like I said yesterday. We're not doing this to become millionaires. I'm far from it. But we're producing a product, and this is going to make it more difficult for us. And like my good colleague, representative from Weld and Boulder County said, this is just going to make it more difficult for us, and it's going to put at risk our property if a falsified credit check is coming forward. To be able to figure out if the person that's going to be living in your property that you gave that resource to is going to be able to pay on time, because we then have to have our own debts that we have to pay. We have to pay debts to all sorts of things that come with homeownership. A lot of you know what homeownership, the debts that come with it. Some landlords also pay for some of the utilities, some for the garbage, some the mortgage. All this needs to be paid. These mortgage companies, these utility companies are not going to wait for us to pay because we can't get paid from a tenant. So I urge a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We did discuss this a lot on seconds, but I still think we need to highlight the issues in this bill. I know it was argued by the sponsors that this relates to folks with vouchers, and if you have vouchers, you've already been screened by the state, and those vouchers will be paid, and you don't have to worry about that. But the vouchers only cover up to ensure that folks aren't paying more than a third of their income. So quite a few of these folks, if rented to, will be responsible for a portion of their rent each month, and landlords are taking great risk if they're not able to determine the likelihood that folks are going to pay. And if they can't pay, we're back into lengthy and painful eviction processes potentially, and that, again, leaves a landlord without being compensated for providing housing. And in order to cover for that risk, they're going to have to look at raising rents to cover areas where they're not getting full rent. And that's just the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish here. I mean, the folks in Colorado didn't put us here to make housing less affordable. They didn't send us here to make it less available. They didn't send us here to make it less safe. They didn't certainly send us here to add potential discrimination to housing outcomes, but that seems to be the outcome of almost everything we're passing here in this space. So I absolutely urge a no vote.
Representative Weinberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, fellow colleagues. I rise today in opposition of House Bill 25-1236. At its core, this bill seeks to amend the criteria landlords can use when screening prospective tenants, specifically those applying with the help of housing subsidies. It prohibits landlords from considering a tenant's credit score, credit history, or any adverse credit event. On paper, this may sound like an effort to promote fairness, but in practice, it does something very different. It removes critical financial information that responsible property owners rely on to make informed decisions. Let's be clear, landlords are small business owners. They're not public housing agencies. Many of them are retirees. They've invested in a property, they manage it, they upkeep, they count on timely rent payments to make ends meet, often to pay their own mortgage. Removing their ability to evaluate credit history or past rent delinquency ties one hand behind their back. Would we ever consider asking a bank to promote a loan without reviewing a credit score? Of course not. But this bill tells private property owners that they must effectively ignore financial red flags. That's not unreasonable, it's reckless. And while I absolutely support efforts to ensure that everyone has an opportunity for stable housing, we must also consider the broader consequences. When we remove risk assessment tools, we increase the risk of default, of eviction, and of damage to property. That doesn't help the tenant, and it certainly doesn't help the landlord. This bill may unintentionally discourage participation in the housing market, especially among those who might be willing to accept housing subsidies if they felt they could screen fairly. And in the middle of a housing crisis, we cannot afford to drive more landlords away. We should be working toward balance, not mandates. Support for tenants should not come at the expense of property rights or common sense business practices. Let's reject this bill and come back to the table with real solutions, ones that protect tenants and respect the right of those who provide housing in our communities. House District 51 urges a no vote.
Representative Zokai.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
Members, I would like to be very clear today about what this bill does not do. I am hearing a lot of misinformation and a lot of confusion, so let me say it very plainly. This bill does not change any information that a landlord can and cannot receive. It is not touching current law as far as the information that is available to a landlord. For folks on housing subsidies, we have to do a cleanup to make sure that they are able to use a portable screening report. These folks are already screened by HUD, and it is already current law that we cannot discriminate against them and that they do not have to share this information. So this bill is not touching any of that. I understand there might be some emotions about the current law, but we are not changing that today. The bill that is in front of us today is here because years ago, we passed a bill and we made it law to allow tenants to reuse a credit report and to be able to reuse the information so they are not stuck paying multiple fees when they're trying to find housing. And what we have found is that there is some cleanup needed to that language to ensure that this is actually working. That is all that we are discussing today. When we hear that the will of this body is not being realized in the real world, we have an obligation to fix it. And that is why I am here to urge a yes vote. The fact of the matter is we all have renters in our districts that are struggling to find housing and are paying fees over and over again and draining their bank account just to submit a credit check. And we cannot say that we support those individuals if we can't pass this small cleanup bill. The only folks who I imagine would have opposition to this are the credit check companies who won't be seeing multiple fees. Landlords should be passing those fees on to those companies, so this is not money going out of their pockets. And just to close, I would like to reject the rhetoric that landlords and renters are somehow diametrically opposed and that we cannot work together to ensure that everybody in our community has access to safe and stable housing. This is a technical cleanup bill. I urge a yes vote.
Representative Weinberg, this is your second and final time to speak. You have 7 minutes and 33 seconds remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, I read this bill, and it does say it. The section of House Bill 1236 that changes what information a landlord can receive under CRS 38-12-902, it says it in plain language, except that a credit history report, a credit score, or an adverse credit event as defined in section 38-12-904-1C3 is not required to be included in a portable tenant screening report concerning a prospective tenant who is seeking to rent with the assistance of housing subsidy. This means if a prospective tenant is using a housing subsidy, their portable tenant screening report no longer needs to be included. Previously, this type of information would typically be included in portability. Tenant screening reports provided to a landlord. Under this bill for tenants with subsidies, that information is excluded by default. This is not the right bill for Colorado right now, especially when we're all of our districts are having trouble with housing. We are going to chase people away with this type of bill and language. This is not going to help the problem. Again, for the last time, I urge a no vote.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just listening to things like, if this body cannot impose its will on the people of Colorado, that's just troubling. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. Imposing your will is in opposition to the consent of the governed. It's a quaint little document. It's Declaration of Independence. Some have read it. So yeah, Colorado passed a really bad law to reuse a credit check. And it was obvious at the time that what you would have is a credit check that was going to be used in an ideological purpose. Now, believe it or not, there are some people that do not worship at the feet of government and do not find that it's what it does is all without error. And so you have a group, HUD, who I guess is going to do this credit check, and then we say, well, that has to be portable. And then, in a sense, your goals, HUD's goals, and the landlord's goals are not aligned, and maybe diametrically opposed. And so now you have the government working against the landlords again. Now, when we say that renters and landlords are not in opposition, that questioning of motive was, yeah, we don't question that. Renters and landlords work together. Renters need landlords need renters, renters need landlords. These type of bills push landlords out of the space and leave renters with less space because you can't trust it. These rent control measures have predictable outcomes: decrease the availability, increase the cost, and increase the amount of slums. That's historically what happens. So what do? Well, the solution to bad legislation is more of it. And we push more of it. You push more of it. Landlords and renters are not in opposition. They want to work together. This puts landlords and renters in opposition because you can't, I wouldn't trust HUD. If you say you have to trust HUD, I wouldn't trust HUD. That's a deal breaker right there. And what happens when you push these people out of that space? Well, some of these places are bought up by corporate renting agencies. And then you say, well, we don't want corporate. Well, you don't want corporate because they can collude on the price. They don't need an app to collude on the price of rentals around a market because that's just called a Monday morning staff meeting. And so you push homes, you push the mom and pops out who are keeping the money in the community, and then you push these rentals into these things that you like to call nonprofit organizations, which are just very, very profitable for the CEOs and the staff because they just don't share the profit outside of there. So they're very profitable. This room props up a lot of very profitable nonprofit organizations. They just keep the profit inside. But we like to pretend it's like, oh, they said they're nonprofit. They must be just wonderful people. Yeah, it's a technical cleanup to a really, really bad idea. And then the next cleanup will be, well, it's mandatory that you accept HUD because we can't figure out why people aren't accepting HUD properties because they don't know if they're going to get paid or not. Because if the renter is responsible for 1/3 of the rent, sure. Is that 1/3 bonded? You could do that in here. You could say we are going to bond. We're not only going to pay 2/3 of that property, but we're going to bond out the rest of it so that if the renter doesn't pay, then the landlord still gets paid. No, you don't do that. You don't handle this in the space where you have the authority to handle it. You handle it on the backs of taxpayers and renters and landlords. Always imposing the will of this body on the population of Colorado. I just can't think of anything more arrogant. Imposing the will of this body. People are struggling to pay rent. Yeah, you keep driving up the cost of energy. You keep driving up the cost of taxes. You keep driving up the cost of regulation that goes into making these properties more expensive. And then you say, so then the solution to all of your cost increasing, and then of course the 22.5% of inflation due to Bidenomic debt spending, devaluing everybody's wages by 22.5%, and then you say, well, landlords can't raise they can't raise their rents. Look at the price of their homes. We had last year a representative stood up here and said they're rich now because the price of their property, the value of their property didn't go up, just the price because of the Bidenomic debt spending. And clearly very few people understand where inflation comes from. So imposing the will of this body is what is causing the price of housing to go up. Imposing the will of this body in opposition to the consent of the governed is causing the price of housing to go up, is causing the mom and pops, the small businesses to go out. I don't know how you rent in this market. Because then in order to cover the risk of this market, of these things, so you might have a deposit and say, oh, you can't have a deposit. You might have a pet deposit. Oh, you can't have a pet deposit because that would be against Fifi's rights or something. I don't know.
Representative DeGraff, back to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Speaker. It's questioning the motives to say that landlords are in opposition to renters. They're not in opposition. They want the renters, but you can't go into HUD and you can't say you have to accept this organization with their very ideologically counter their basis that is counter to your interests, and say we as the body of Colorado legislators, not representatives, this is not representing the people of Colorado, this is legislating to and on. This is not doing government for the people, this is doing government to the people. And there's a very big difference. This bill, what this bill does, this need for a cleanup, is it emphasizes why the previous bill was so bad. It's not a cleanup, it's a cleanup to impose the will of this body. Impose the will. It doesn't change anything about the previous bill, it just makes this body just more tyrannical. Impose the will of this body. I mean, when I ask the people in House District 222, do you need the will of this body imposed? They say no. They look around this room and go, hell no.
Representative to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a bad bill because it's based on a worse bill. And you don't make legislation better by reinforcing something that's worse. This is the people of Colorado. This is, if you look at it historically, what is that most unconscionable freedom that Marx references is the free market. This is another attack on the free market. When you wonder why we say that this is Marxist, it's an attack on the free market. That's the most unconscionable freedom, the free market.
Representative DeGraff, you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The purpose of this body is not to impose its will on the citizens of Colorado. The purpose of this body is to represent and to secure the rights of the citizens of Colorado, not impose its will. And I don't know how to make that any more clear. You took an oath to it. It's in the Declaration of Independence. So I don't get it. I don't get it. Represent the people of Colorado. Don't impose your will on them. Ask them. Ask how many people in Colorado want your will imposed on them. None of you were given some sort of anointing of infallibility to come here. You're here to represent the rights.
Your time has expired. Seeing no further Representative Woog, this is your second and final time to speak. You have 8 minutes and 33 seconds remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And just addressing what was mentioned by one of the bill sponsors, I'm just going to read a section here from the bill. So the current law prohibits a landlord from inquiring into a prospective tenant's adverse credit event. This bill defines adverse credit event as an event that can be reflected in a consumer credit report or might negatively affect a person's credit score, including past due delinquent rent payments and collections. So again, you can imagine as a landlord or property manager, if they can no longer see the credit score of the prospective tenant, or if they have delinquent rent payments, that's going to certainly make them uneasy and not want to take these tenants. Therefore, that may make them change their mind about accepting any housing vouchers at all. So again, minimizing the amount of housing available to these people that we are told they are trying to help. One of the biggest things about this bill that really creates an issue, and I've mentioned this before, but it's very, very important. The tenant can use a credit report they have. So they can give a copy. And you're telling me AI can't make that credit report look great when it's not? It's extended it from 30 days. Now they have 60 days to hold that report and use that as their report to this landlord. So that's a lot of time. I think I can probably tank my credit and quit paying rent. I can do a lot of things to put myself in a horrible financial situation in 60 days that now as a landlord, I won't even see that they can't even afford this property. So we know this. I've done this. I said this was my business. I was a small business owner with a small property management company. And I'm saying, as an expert, this will create an issue. This is going to create less housing. This is going to create higher rents. I want these people to be in housing as well, that they can afford. This is not helping. I'm trying to say this respectfully. This is going to hurt tenants that are trying to get into housing. It's going to make it much more difficult. So with that, I strongly urge a no vote. Let's get out of the way and find real solutions to making housing more affordable. Less regulation.
Assistant Minority Leader Winter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Body, this year is the first year I worked on any type of legislation in this realm, so I learned a lot. One of the things the bill sponsor said was there should be a relationship between tenants and landlords. This year I was approached by some folks from Pueblo and Pueblo West asking me to work on a piece of legislation because they were worried about rents and what it was doing to their property as they upgraded their properties. And then as they upgrade their properties, some of the, I guess, new building codes that have been put on them, and they're trying to figure out a way to at least recoup some of this. What surprised me was some of the things they said, and this goes back to what I say all the time. Sometimes when you stakeholder this legislation, it's got to be with people outside the Metroplex. So the voice of these people, and I'm in all honesty and respect, I'm going to explain to you how they feel. They feel that landlords and property owners are being attacked for one simple reason. They think that they are being hammered and hammered and hammered in hopes that they'll sell their properties. They truly believe the state wants to buy their property so the state can run a lot of housing. And it's really hard to see private property owners do this. The gentleman asked me from the realty company in Pueblo to run that piece of legislation. He's like, sir, we never were able to have children. He goes, so myself and my wife, he goes, we had a niece right away in life, and myself and my wife bought these properties to try to give them something. His brother-in-law passed away, and he just wanted to be able to provide something for his family, and he says, I feel like, I'm under attack. He goes, I'm the landlord that buys Christmas gifts for some of my tenants' kids. I'm the landlord that if they're running into a rough month, I'll run an extension or I'll cover trash pickup. And they feel like legislation is being done to them, not for them. And they truly feel like they're being pushed out of the market. It's almost like they can't compete. And I understand, and this goes back to the rural-urban divide we talk about all the time, and I've said this at the well before, I understand that there's problems in different areas, and there's bad actors everywhere. But to levy things like this on landlords that come from my district, and I won't say every landlord's perfect, I would be remiss to say that, but not to prop up the ones that are good landlords and they feel like they're constantly under attack. And they see more and more legislation come out of the building that handcuffs them from even actually to be able to use their private property the way that they would like. So I just wanted, as you talk about stakeholdering, I just wanted to let you know what people from my district feel that a lot of this legislation is doing outside of this building, and they feel like it's moving from private property rights more to state housing. So I will be a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Mabry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
All right, I want to address a few things here. First off, my mom has a Section 8 voucher. It is incredibly difficult to get a Section 8 voucher. You cannot get a Section 8 voucher if you have an eviction on your record. You just can't. You can't get a Section 8 voucher if you have certain felonies on your record. I also want to address, and I know the bill sponsor is going to get into this, but the legislation that we passed that was asking about an inquiry into bad credit doesn't say you can't look at a credit score or require a credit score or look at the fact that there was bad credit. What that law says is the landlord can't ask about what exactly happened there. Nothing prevents them from requiring a credit check or considering the fact that the credit score is bad when they're screening a tenant. That is still allowed with this bill, without this bill. I also want to recognize that there's a narrative going around in this building that we overregulate landlords. I disagree. Your landlord can raise your rent by as much as they want year over year, and evictions are at an all-time high. And I'm proud to stand with Coloradans who cannot afford to own homes as they scratch tooth and nail to survive. The people living paycheck to paycheck. If you are working class in this country, you live 7 years less than everyone else. And if you've been in the business of being a landlord in Colorado for years and years and years and years, and you're talking about getting out now
because we're trying to do the bare minimum to help the people struggling to live paycheck to paycheck, congratulations, because your payout when you sell will be incredibly massive. Since the year 2000, home values in Colorado have seen significant appreciation, with Colorado seeing a 329% return on investment. If you have multiple properties, you will likely be a millionaire when you sell, and you can't take the property with you, so it will be back on the market and increase the supply of housing for sale here in the state of Colorado. I am not saying that landlords are bad. I'm not attacking landlords. I'm just saying you can charge whatever you want, evict a renter who's behind on their rent or breaking the rules easily. When you are a landlord, typically, though not in every case, that is a bonus. The vast majority of landlords have another job that brings in the income they live on. And that's okay. I agree that these investments should be protected. You should be able to recover your property from renters who break the rules or fail to pay their rent, or who, if you want to move back in. But there should be basic protections for those people who cannot afford to own. I know we all got sent this green book outlining the law in this space, and it's a nice prop, but I'm very proud of what's in this book. Legal standards outlining that homes should be safe and habitable, free of mold and bed bugs, with functioning plumbing and heat. I hear every single year from renters who pay a full rent for years in homes that do not have functioning heat in the winter, or that are infested with bed bugs. I've had to sit in the Denver County Court with single moms who've shown me photos of their kids riddled with bed bug bites. We need to have a few pages of law protecting people like that. This book has a bunch of information outlining federal protections under the Fair Housing Act and Americans with Disability Act. It outlines Colorado law that protects victims of domestic violence who are facing eviction as a result of their abuse. It provides information on when a landlord can evict a tenant and outlines that they should have a reason to remove somebody from their home. I'm particularly proud of that. Housing is different than almost any other good. I believe that it is a human right, and it is okay that we have rules on how to deal with discrimination, mold, bed bugs, domestic violence, and evictions. I'll also add that when these things go to court, more than 90% of the landlords have lawyers, and less than 10% of the renters do. I also want to acknowledge some of the direct attacks that come at me in this space. I work at a nonprofit. I do this work because I was evicted as a kid. I'm a high school dropout. I went to school because I wanted to help people like my mom. And I worked my way through school as a dishwasher, a janitor, a cook, a pizza delivery driver. I have hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans, and I help my friends found a nonprofit where we do not charge our clients a dime for doing this work. My nonprofit is funded on grants.
Representative Mabry, I will direct you back to
And
the
I
bill.
make less money now than I did before I did this job. What we're talking about is helping the people who are incredibly poor have a slightly easier time finding new housing. We're not limiting the information a landlord can use to screen a renter. You can still get a credit report. There's nothing in the law banning somebody from getting a credit report, which is why the previous representative said, oh, well, now the timeline is 60 days. I mean, he himself admitted you can get a credit score. If we're talking about the timeline on when it's provided, that's a different thing, but you can get the credit score. That can still require a credit check. Having an extra property that generates extra income puts landlords in a different financial position than those who live paycheck to paycheck and have no assets. Of course, the people who have extra properties also struggle from time to time, and we should help them when they do. But we also need to make sure that we're doing enough to provide a little help to the poorest people in our state. This makes it a little easier. It just helps us implement a law we passed 2 years ago, and I urge a yes vote.
Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Maybe one of the reasons there's a rumor going around that we're attacking landlords is because just this session, not including the last two, which were pretty egregious in this arena, there's 19 bills attacking landlords. That's That's how rumors get started. And so we are having an issue here that is driving up costs for the tenants. I don't understand why you can't see a correlation between harassing landlords, more cost for rent and housing. This is direct correlation. This is actual causality. And so we've got to stop attacking the landlords on this. Because I think we're all over the place with this, specifically with definitions, because he just got up and read out of the bill how it actually is going to hinder background checks and all those kind of things. You can stand here as much as you want and say that it won't do that, but the bill actually says it, and he just read that. And so I move that 1236 be put back into seconds.
That is a proper motion.
And I believe that very strongly.
The motion before us is to refer the bill back to seconds. I will ask that people speak only to the motion at this point. Thank you, Representative Weinberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my good colleague from El Paso. I think it's a sensible motion to refer this back to second readings. The reason we should refer it back to second is we're having the discussion of punishing the 99% for the 1% deeds. And again, referring this back to seconds would allow us to continue the conversation of this bill is not about bad landlords and bed bugs, as I just heard down here. This bill is about making it harder for landlords to be protected in our state. So I believe referring it back to second readings would literally put us in the position to have a wiser conversation, 43 days left. There's no reason to rush this thing through. And let's truly dissect as to if this bill would actually benefit the state in its housing crisis. So I rise in support of this motion.
Representative Woog.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also support this motion to bring it back to seconds. We're talking about here, we're talking about a law that will affect landlords and prospective tenants. And, you know, I'll speak for myself like we're supposed to do. I want both of them to be in a good situation. I want tenants to have more housing, more affordable rents. And as mentioned earlier, because of this bill, it's going to create issues for landlords. It's going to create uncertainty. It's going to create distrust, and therefore they're not going to be allowing their properties to these same tenants we're talking about. We need to go back and discuss this, talk about amendments, hear from more stakeholders, and discuss this bill at length and make some changes to make it win-win. Right now, it's lose-lose. It's lose-lose. The landlords are losing, the tenants are losing. So this bill needs some work, and I urge a yes vote on this amendment, or this motion.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I absolutely agree with the motion to put it back on seconds. This is sensible. This is prudent. This allows us to dissect the issue even further. This is a rural versus urban issue. If you look at housing, affordable housing in rural areas, it is vastly different than affordable housing or housing in urban areas. We have tenants and landlords who are operating out of 1 or 2 households in rural, while you might have apartment complexes in the Denver area. By allowing us to go back to second reading, we can dissect what this actually means as we're looking at all of these aspects across the state. So we're not doing a one-size-fits-all, because that seems to be the theme here under the Gold Dome, is we're going to do one size, one solution for the entire state. And that's not okay. By allowing this to go back to seconds, we can actually do the amendment process as it's supposed to be. We have had handfuls, not just this year, last year, or the years before, of bills that target and harass our landlords. When they leave, supply and demand, you have less of those offering the housing abilities, so of course the prices are going to go up for the tenants looking for these houses. Simple, basic math we all learn, or should learn, in high school, if not college. So by going back to seconds, we're going to be able to look and talk about this even further. We're going to look at what does it mean for the Eastern Plains, what does it mean for the metro area, what does it mean for the Western Slope, because they're all vastly different. I have heard, and I feel like by going back to seconds, we can actually put these into amendments from my district, that they are going to leave this business. In rural America, it is hard to build more houses. I know it's hard to build it across Colorado, but especially in my rural House District 63, we have a housing shortage, not just for affordable housing on the lower income end, but for the retirement end, for the middle class family, for those looking to expand their families. And when landlords are looking to leave because they are being harassed in the state and we are so anti-small business in the state, we have less housing options now and the price is gonna go up for the tenants. This is a lose-lose situation for Colorado. I strongly support this motion to go back to seconds so we can look at this in Colorado as a whole, per counties, per districts, per rural, per urban, making sure that we are doing best by the tenants, but we're also doing best by the landlords because many of them will defer payments for a couple months. Many of the ones that I've talked to in my district are the ones buying the Christmas gifts, are the ones helping with transportation for their children to go to school depending on the situation. Why are we running these folks out? Do we not want more small business in the communities? Do we not want those who understand their communities to offer housing that is best fit for the different counties? Because my 7 counties are vastly different from each other, let alone different from the rest of the state. Can we please go back to seconds so that way we are making sure that we are looking at the state as a whole in the individuality that we have in these respective 65 districts instead of a one-size-fits-all?
Representative Barone.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Moving this bill back to seconds will give us a more in-depth talk on exactly what my colleagues here said to see how it's going to affect the housing market here. It really is not going to be doing much help that the sponsors say it's going to do for tenants. We got to be able to talk about cost and effect in seconds of landlords and small business owners like myself to where if our overhead is costing more than what we're getting in the rental, it's not going to be worth doing it anymore. It's the same in any business. Following regulation, paying for everything that goes wrong, when you can only be limited to receiving a certain amount of pay for your rental. And then what this bill does is it expands that risk of not knowing whether you're going to be able to get rent payment on time, whether the person that's living in the house is not going to destroy it, which in turn will come back to you as the landlord, as a small business owner, to pay for that, to remediate that. Yes, there might be some occasions where you do get your what you pay out of it, destroyed house or whatever back, but the process of going through that with the court system, the paperwork, and even finding the tenant if they leave is going to be a long process, which we can't afford to wait that long process to get that money back. So referring this bill back to seconds will give us a more in-depth talk on those aspects and maybe amending this to where it would not hurt the landlord as much. I do urge and I vote on the motion.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I just wanted to have the quote accurate, so I'll quote the quote. And it's that single, unconscionable freedom, free trade. And that's what I feel like we're up against here
Representative DeGraff, the motion before us is to refer the bill to second reading. I'd ask that you speak to that directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think this needs to go back to second reading because there's obviously there's a lot here that hasn't been, I think, explored. And I think the individuals that have expertise in this space are pretty clear that there will be consequences to this bill. Now, just assure you that everybody on the our side of the aisle wants everybody to have affordable housing. And so we're fighting for this affordable housing all the time. We're trying to stop you from making it unaffordable. There's this underlying idea in this bill that landlords are trying to screen out a tenant to be able to say, we don't want you. But think about that. A landlord has a property. That property only makes money if it's rented. They want a renter. If they didn't want a renter, they just wouldn't put that property up for rent. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to screen everybody out. by just not putting that property up for rent. So what they have to do is they have to put that property up for rent, and then for their property, so that they're not deprived of property without due process of law, they have to do a risk-benefit analysis. Cost-benefit analysis, risk-reward, however you want to say it. They need to do that with each and every client. Now this bill, it seems just to make this assumption that they want to screen everybody out. They want to get somebody in that property. Now, the best way to make that property available and make it clean and habitable and all those things is to have lots of properties available where somebody has the ability to make a choice and not creating a monopoly by forcing properties like these types of bills do, 19 bills, anti-landlord bills.
Again, Representative DeGraff, please focus on why this bill should go back to second readings.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think we need to focus. We need to go back to seconds because we should probably look at how these bills interact with the other bills. How do these bills interact with the other bills? And we should also look at how these bills interact with the anti-landlord bills that are coming up in this session. Now, of course, we should be looking at why we're $3.5 or $4.5 billion in debt, but because that also impacts the affordability of these homes. We want to make homes affordable for the people of Colorado. You do that with energy prices, bringing those down to make that availability. This is going against the property rights of landlords. So yes, we want to bring down the prices. This will not do it. And what you have to do is you have to first and foremost...
Representative DeGraff, this is not talking about the bill, and I've tried to give some latitude here, as I am with all members, to speak about the specific issues that should be reviewed on seconds, not to continue to argue the premise of the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. But we need to go back to seconds in order to look at how all of these things interact. We need to go back to seconds and have the discussion about, hey, this is not working first and foremost inside the property rights of the people who own the property. That's what we need to discuss. We have a primacy duty to protect the property of these landlords, and then we need to work as to making these properties, what we can do to make these properties more affordable. That's not done on the backs of these landlords. So I think we should move this back to seconds because there's clearly a lot of information that has not been addressed. There's a lot of presumptions that have been made by the sponsors that the landlords are adversarial to tenants. And I think we need to start with the premise that we need to protect the property rights of others, and we need to make this more affordable for others. And this bill does not do that, and so we probably should figure out what we can do and maybe make some amendments to this bill so that it could be done. But yes, a good start on this bill would be to move it back to seconds.
Representative Zokai.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, we had a robust debate on seconds. Everybody who wanted to speak to the bill had an opportunity to speak to the bill. We offered an amendment to help the credit bureaus with some of their concerns. Multiple amendments were offered. Each of those amendments were debated. I believe we are ready to move forward, and I urge a no vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before Representative Lindsay.
Are they done? Which is on the, on the motion?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the motion to refer this bill back to second reading. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
I see you over there, Madam Minority Leader. How do you vote?
Thank you. I vote yes.
Madam Minority Leader votes yes. Speaker voted. please close the machine. With 22 aye votes, 43 no votes, the motion is lost. We are back to the bill. Representative Woog.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro
Representative
Tem.
Woog, my apologies. I'm filling in up here, and you have already spoken 2 times to the bill. I apologize.
Are you sure?
I'm positive. Further discussion on House Bill 1236. Representative Lindsay. To the bill.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. Sorry. Good morning, colleagues. I just want to close out here and give a little clarity on a couple of things as I was prepping for this bill. Some of us were here back in 2023. We passed a bill. It was Senate Bill 184. It had to do with like rental applications, and there was a section of that bill that said if a landlord uses financial information, including rental history or credit history, as a criterion in consideration, hold on, I have to switch glasses. I'm blind. In consideration of a rental application from a prospective tenant who is seeking to rent with the assistance of a housing subsidy, the landlord shall not consider or inquire about, and there's a few things. One of those things, credit score, adverse credit event, or lack of credit score unless the landlord is required by federal law to consider a credit score or a lack of a credit score. And so this bill, Senate Bill 184, passed in 2023. It passed the House 43-22, and that is one piece of the bill, this current bill, that is represented in Rep. Zokai and I working on 1236. That same year, in 2023, we also passed House Bill 23-1099. This bill was about a portable screening report. In this bill, through stakeholding at the time, there was a carve-out made, in particular for like small mom and pop landlords. And it said a landlord is exempt from the requirements set forth in subsections, which is basically saying using or accepting a portable tenant screening report. They are exempt from these things as long as they do not accept more than one application fee at a time for a dwelling unit. This piece of statute hasn't changed. The piece of statute from 184 hasn't changed. We passed those 2 years ago. 1099 also passed out of the House on a vote of 44-19. So how those two pieces intersect into 1236, we have seen after 1099 was passed and made law that it was actually not able to be utilized in the way that we voted for our constituents and for people in the state of Colorado to use it. So we addressed this issue by coming back and looking at what the problem was and trying to find a solution to figure out how folks can be able to use this portable screening report. And as a reminder, the original bill came out because the problem is each time you are applying for a house or an apartment, you're paying $50, $80 for an application fee for the background check with no guarantee that you will be accepted. And so maybe you have to do that several times, or maybe you don't have stellar credit and so you're denied. So you have to go to another landlord, fill out the application fee, get the background check, pay $80 more. And this can go on and on. So the intention behind the bill 2 years ago was to make it so that people could take one credit report around while they're applying for apartments, because it is very common that the first place you apply for is not the place that you're going to get. And so that was the aim of the original bill. There was a problem on how that can be utilized, and so we came back and saying, here's a way to still allow people the access to the portable screening report. The portable screening report has many things that has to be on it: name, income verification, job information. As we've been talking so much about subsidies, people who have subsidies are not required by law to have that same exact information divulged to landlords. So we are attempting to marry the two and say people who are on vouchers, who have different requirements for information, can also use this portable screening report. That's where the voucher piece is coming into this bill that was established in Senate Bill 184. Now, I've heard a lot of folks talk about how this bill makes it so that landlords can't do any credit reports for anybody. And I think we can debate policy and political philosophy all day long. That's what we're here to do, but it needs to be based on like the language that's actually in the bill. So this is from our bill, 1236. I'm quoting from current statute, and then I'll tell you what is coming up from our bill. Current statute, a rental and credit history report. And keep in mind, this is from the portable tenant screening report part of section of the statute. A rental and credit history report for the prospective tenant that complies with section 3812-904 concerning a landlord's consideration of a prospective tenant's rental history. Here's the new language. Except that a credit history report, a credit score, or adverse credit event as defined in section 3812-904 is not required to be included in a portable tenant screening report concerning a prospective tenant who is seeking to rent with the assistance of a housing subsidy. And so that piece, it's just marriage with 184 into this bill to show that these folks can also use portable tenant screening reports. Now, in 1099, that exclusion for mom and pops, it said that if you don't want to accept a portable tenant screening report, you can still pull your own credit report, your own background check, except you can only do one at a time. You don't get to collect applications and fees from like 10 prospective tenants and then only choose one. That is what 1099 did. That still exists. Nothing changes with 1236. So I heard people talk about fraudulent documents, AI. That is the world we're living in. Any document can be falsified at this point. That is its own thing that we need to figure out how to mitigate in this body. But if for some reason you don't want to use a portable screening report, or you don't think it's legit, or it's not adding up, you can go ahead and pull the background report. You can only pull one at a time though, which I think is fair and reasonable. So landlords still have that option. That has not been taken away in our bill. And that was a thoughtful carve out from 1099. And sorry, you all look like little blurbs when I'm wearing my reading glasses. So, but on top of all this, I just want to talk about poor people, basically. I represent HD 42. It's Northwest Aurora. Our average median income is about $40,000. It's one of the lowest income districts in the state. And all of your people, sent you here to fight for them, and so did mine. I live in a low-income district that has majority renters. We have a lot of unstable situations. We have a lot of unhoused folks. They sent me here to fight for their concerns as well, and I'm here to do it. And I think that one of the things that we miss often in this place, and I'm not saying that all of us grew up with silver spoons in our mouth. I know that's not the case. I know many of us have grown up started in poverty and have made our way, and I'm so proud of each and every one of you. That is awesome. But poor people exist. They exist in my community, and as policymakers, we are supposed to, for the state of Colorado, be addressing all of these needs. I hear a lot of times people in this chamber talk about Denver or Aurora in a very negative light. They talk about folks in tents or homeless people. And I just want to ask you, where do you think those people come from? Or where do you want those people to live? And so it may not, I think some people are like, it's not my problem to fix.
You have 1 minute remaining.
But it is our job to fix this problem. When we talk about credit scores, 13% of Coloradans have a credit score like under 500. So where do you want those people to live? 60,000 evictions happen every year in the state of Colorado. Where do you want those people to live? And people with low credit scores and people who have evictions on their records are not terrible people. They are hardworking people that have problems going on financially. They have come up against life-altering events. They need a place to live. And I'm here to make sure that people who face those circumstances have as best of a chance as possible to get rehoused, to have a way, to have a safe and warm place to sleep every night. This bill does a little piece of that.
Expired.
And I ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1236 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem,
Madam Minority Leader, how do you vote?
thank you. I vote no. Thank you.
Madam Minority Leader votes no. Please close the machine. With 36 aye vote, 29 no votes, and 0 excused, House Bill 1236 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of Senate Bill 188.
Senate Bill 188 by Senators Coleman and Rodriguez, also Representatives McCluskey and Duran, concerning the payment of the expenses of the Legislative Department.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move Senate Bill 188 on third reading and final passage.
Representative Bottoms.
Again, I understand this is just appropriation for this, and this is, I'm not anti anybody on this. I just think it's important to keep saying this. We're spending over $1 million on furniture, and I know that the argument is we're spending it only on the administrative staff. Well, yeah, that's true, except we've already spent multiple millions before that on our furniture. And we could all go look at it, remember all that stuff. And so we're spending millions of dollars on furniture in a year that we need to cut the budget. I just don't think that's a good look for us. And you're going to have people questioning that when you go back to your districts. Well, everybody else in the state is going through recession, going through difficult times. The state's overspent, so we need to knock off $5 billion. But you spent $5 million on furniture? 1.2 comes out of this bill. That's just not a good look for us, and this is why the people in the state don't trust us in this room. And I think this is also why they say, well, I can't go buy furniture. I can't just go arbitrarily buy furniture. Well, my furniture's 20 years old, as that was the argument too. Just because it's 20 years old doesn't mean you can go afford to buy new if you don't have the money to do that, and we don't have the money to do that. We're cutting $5 billion, but we've already added another $1 billion instead of cutting. And so when does this kind of thing, this is more of ideological, when does this stop? That's the only reason I'm struggling with this. I know this is the preparation for what we do. I understand that, and most of this is necessary, but I don't think this is necessary.
Further discussion. Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think if we were looking seriously at what we're going to do for Colorado, we should probably look at, because I see that, we're like, oh, all right, well, we have these amounts of money, $73 million, $75 million for the fiscal 2025-6 fiscal year is appropriated to the Legislative Department. Consists of $73 million for the general fund, $5,000 from the cash fund. One way we could solve that, you could just take $25 million off that or $50 million off that by just cutting what we're doing here proportionally. let's say we just took a year and we said, let's look at what we're doing. What is it that we're required to do legislatively? We're required to balance the budget. The farthest thing from the mind of this room is balancing the budget. The only way that this budget has even been proposed to be balanced, aside from things like going into the emergency fund, and the emergency is legislators that don't know how to balance a budget.
And Representative DeGraff, I'm just going to ask you to really tailor your remarks to Senate Bill 188, which concerns the payment of the expenses of the legislative department, and refrain from remarks which imply that legislators in this body do or don't know how to do their jobs. You are certainly welcome to your opinion, but we can't phrase that in a way that impugns the motives of others.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I did not mean to imply that at all. We need to cut the budget. Just authorizing money just to spend money status quo, I think, is something that we need to evaluate. I can think of a way to evaluate that would be automatically to just cut this session by 1/3 or 2/3, and then spend that other time on line-by-line analysis of the budget. So I'm going to have to say no on this bill, because I think the people of Colorado are, I agree with my colleague, they're having a hard time trusting this body just to say, just to go back to the people of Colorado and say, hey, your income, your wages have been devalued by 22.5%, but so we're going to need to adjust our spending accordingly, because we're going to need more of your money because we devalued your wages, but we don't want to suffer from that. So if we want to join the people of Colorado, I think we should be looking more at cutting this session by 2/3 or 1/3 at least, and then also in getting into our primary obligations, which is the balancing of the budget line by line by line, and applying something like the Federal Agency of Fiscal Oversight to make sure that we are spending the taxpayers' monies wisely, not just upping our spending because the government has devalued their wages.
Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. It is an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
Thank you. Members, I want to highlight some of my comments yesterday. First of all, the legislative department budget comes together for our agencies, the Office of Legislative Legal Services, Legislative Council staff, the Joint Budget Committee, and our auditor's office. Our committees helped approve those agency budgets. So the Committee on Legal Services unanimously approved the budget for the Office of Legislative Legal Services. The Legislative Audit Committee unanimously approved the auditor's budget. The Joint Budget Committee unanimously approved the Joint Budget Committee budget, and the Legislative Council, which is the largest of our year-round committees, also approved the Legislative Council staff budget. So these agency budgets have gone through a thorough vetting. I am pleased to say that the Executive Committee helped initiate a number of reductions in operations. We have eliminated any letter interim committees. Our statutory committees will be suspended for a year. We reduced travel. We took a number of cuts to ensure that our branch would be contributing a reduction in 11% overall to the state's budget problem. I urge an aye vote on Senate Bill 188.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 188 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Madam Minority Leader, how do you vote?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I vote no. Thank you.
The Minority Leader votes no. Representatives Clifford, Marshall, and Woodrow. Representative Clifford, that is a $5 fine. Representative Woodrow, that is a $5 fine, and I want my pen back. Please close the machine. With 42 aye votes, 23 no votes, and 0 excused, Senate Bill 188 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 199.
Senate Bill 199 by Senators Lundin and Rodriguez, also Representatives McCluskey and Puglisi, concerning suspending legislative interim activities and in connection therewith reducing an appropriation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I move Senate Bill 199 on third reading and final passage.
Representative Weinberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Ladies and gentlemen, finally a good bill for the state of Colorado. Cutting our interim committees for the state is the most responsible thing we can do in this room, and I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Assistant Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I think as elected officials, where we're supposed to be in the interim is with our constituents. I have 9 counties and 25,000 miles. Those are the people that we represent, and I think that sometimes we get in this fishbowl and we forget that. And I think in the summertime, we all sit and bounce ideas off of each other when we should really be bouncing them off the people that sent us here. And that's the people that we represent, so I urge a strong yes vote on this. Thank you.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 199 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote. Madam Minority Leader, how do you vote?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I vote yes.
Madam Minority Leader votes yes. Representatives Garcia and Story, please close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 0 excused, Senate Bill 199 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1004.
House Bill 1004 by Representatives Woodrow and Mabry, also Senators Gonzalez and Hendrickson, concerning pricing coordination by landlords.
Madam Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I move House Bill 1004 on third reading and final passage.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just more of the same. It feels like that we're pushing landlords out of the space. And I'm just looking at this as far as the Chamber of Commerce that are opposing it. They might know something about business. You have lenders opposing, you have Chamber of Commerce opposing, real estate opposing. Yeah, there are people that are supporting this, certainly, but what is the beauty of the free market is that it figures this stuff out by itself. And when you're pushing, we've talked about all of this legislative stuff that is going on is pushing these properties into corporate hands, pushing individuals out because they can't afford to fight these battles one-on-one. And so what you do is you're pushing them into corporate hands, and then the way that these properties, the rent in these properties is colluded is a Monday morning staff meeting. This room is not good at trying to manipulate the market. It really doesn't matter what your intentions are. This room is not good at it. If it was good at it, we wouldn't need to be coming back and doing these bills continuously. You're making the problem worse. What you need to be doing is you need to be figuring out how to free the market, how to decrease the regulation on the market, how to decrease the energy costs, how to get those things so the energy costs are done, how to decrease the cost of government so that when that taxes can go down. That is what makes homes affordable for people. Not pushing mom and pops out of the way so that corporate rentals can come in and take those properties over. Because that's all that's going to continually happen with this stuff. Bill after bill after bill. And are rental prices going down? Yeah, I guess some say they are. Well, probably because Colorado is overbuilt. The market will correct itself. The market is shown over and over and over that it has a much better handle on this than anybody or any group in this room. So I recommend a no vote on this. Let's try to free the market so that we can start lowering the costs instead of just lowering availability, lowering complexity, and then moving the money of these into corporate, which takes it out of state. You want these properties to be in the hands of Coloradans. When these properties are in the hands of Coloradans, that money stays in the states. When you push that money into corporate investments, that money goes out of the state. These bills push the property out of the hands of state property owners.
Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Insert previous comments here. No, okay. Actually, to this bill. We heard a little earlier that we're not targeting landlords. We heard that 3 bills ago, and now here we are with another bill that targets landlords. I do urge a no vote. Just to summarize a few things we heard yesterday from the sponsors, that collusion is a crime. So why do we need another bill that says collusion is a crime? We heard we have had allegations made by several states' attorneys general and the Department of Justice in something that's already working its way through the courts, something that will be decided one way or the other and could negate the need for this bill. If it is passed into law, it could be reversed based on decisions made in courts. We've told we can't wait 10 years, but we've also seen and we heard articles read yesterday that show that we are probably have hit the peak of rental costs and they're coming down. So I doubt that landlords are colluding to lower prices, and maybe that's okay if they do, but prices are coming down. And I think we can look at the prices going up in the rental market are fairly proportional and consistent with the number of bills that we've passed in this House that impact landlords and tenants in the construction of homes. I'd posit that the cause of prices going up might be collusion, or I'm sorry, voting together in this House to pass bills that increase the cost of housing. So I think we need to take a break. Maybe just passing one landlord-tenant bill today would be enough of a break, and let this one go. I urge a no vote.
Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know it's a lot of the same words, a lot of the same ideas of why this is bad, but it is simply coming down to an attack on free market and competitive market, which has worked, which isn't broken in this state. It isn't causing anything that sticks it to the consumer, that gives the consumer options. And that's where businesses either prosper or fail. That's why we have a competitive market and a free market. All of the businesses that we see, all the necessities that we use are all based on competitive market pricing. I have a business that runs off of competitive pricing for other people to do the same thing I do in teaching. There's just a certain level of trusting the free market and not using it to make a bill like this that further creates litigation for landlords based on their ability to keep up in the free market and the competitive market. Landlords that in and of themselves are business owners and small business owners. We don't need to be sticking it to the business owners and small business owners already doing that enough. We don't need to do that even more. So I definitely encourage a no vote on this bill.
Representative Hartsook.
Good morning, Madam Speaker, and thank you so kindly.
You're welcome.
So under Section 1, it starts out by saying, agreements or conspiracies, interesting choice of words, between competitors to fix prices of other commercial terms are currently illegal. So it's already illegal to do that. It's already illegal to price fix. It's already illegal to collude. We already have statutes on the book that say all of this is illegal. But that's not good enough, apparently. So now we have to add more to it. And then it goes on to say that algorithmic devices have made illegal agreements more challenging to detect. So on one hand, we have technology that's expanding, and we talk about how great it is, but now we're saying technology is making this more difficult. Throughout history, people have used different ways and means to get around laws. So instead of punishing people that are breaking the law that already currently exists, we're going to attack a system and a whole group and say, let's make things worse for everybody. You used to do a lot of research when you were renting. You had to do things by hand or by foot, by going around and seeing what prices were being charged and what was the market carrying. But now you have algorithms that can do that. You have algorithms that can do almost anything today. We can do all kinds of research. We can do all kinds of information gathering. But we already stated that it's illegal to collude. So if you were doing this by hand, then does that mean it's not okay? I mean, where are we going to look at this and go, let's punish the people that are breaking the laws, and if they're breaking the law? That goes to the court of law, and that will be determined there. But in this body, we're going, no, we think that there's agreements and there's conspiracies out there. So we, this body, are making an assumption in Section 1 of the Legislative Declaration. We, this body, is assuming that everybody is in a conspiracy out there. That's my opinion. It's a little bit paranoid to start with. But that is the opening sentence. And then it starts out and it continues to say it's already illegal. Well, if it's already illegal, then why are we writing another law? I mean, seriously, why are we writing another law if it is already illegal to collude? Why not prosecute the people that are breaking the law? Why not get some actual facts out there? Jump down to paragraph C. Talks about a White House study back in 23. Estimates that the cost to renters of anti-competitive pricing was $3.8 billion. Talks about how the market in Denver is the second highest of any metro area in the country. Well, I've lost count. I mean, last year we passed 705 bills. So we're the sixth most regulated state. We keep seeing laws and regulations increasing and increasing and increasing. And then we wonder why costs are going up and up and up. I don't know. Maybe there's a corollary. Just throwing that out there. The more laws, the more regulations you stack on, the more things it costs businesses and consumers and everyone else out there. Maybe we should look at helping the people out there. Maybe we should look at increasing the markets. Maybe we should look at increasing jobs. But instead, we're going to add another law to the books that's going to go after something that is already illegal. That just seems very redundant. I would suggest that we go back to the drawing board and cut some regulations and cut what is hampering businesses and consumers from trying to get out there and improve their lives, and focusing on helping that be achieved than passing more laws to, quote, enforce what's already illegal. I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Representative Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I heard a bill sponsor say we're not targeting landlords, but this is the second bill out of 4 bills on thirds targeting landlords. So I'm just trying to rationalize that. We've heard 4 bills, and 2 of those 4 bills are targeting landlords. So just saying that out loud. We are pushing landlords out. I get emails from constituents every day. I represent both rural and urban parts of Douglas County, and I have landlords in both of those parts. And they are done. They're done. Some of them use this as retirement. Some of these people are landlords to work to provide for their families, and they're done. And what they're doing is they're selling, you heard that from the representative from El Paso, they're selling to corporations who are then taking the revenue out of Colorado. So I'm just trying to figure out what we're doing when we're forcing these small mom and pop business owners out of Colorado who spend their money in Colorado, who buy from other small businesses in Colorado, when they sell to these corporations who then take the money from Colorado. We're the 6th most regulated state. 44 other states don't regulate as much as we do in Colorado.
Representative Bradley to the bill. Thank you.
We are feeling it in the state. The landlords are feeling it. And I'm wondering what the end goal is. Is the end goal to have no more landlords in Colorado and only tenants? Then what do we do? When there's no more landlords, then what do we do? Because I've been here for 3 years, and this problem continues to happen, where landlords continue to sell. I just wonder what the end goal is. We are taxing, feeing, and regulating the people of Colorado to death. I told you yesterday the median cost of an apartment has dropped 2% over the course of a year, a savings of about $35 a month. It has not increased, it is dropping. In all, you could expect to pay $1,700 for a typical unit at the end of 2024, and that's data collected. And this number does not include rental discounts and concessions, which have been getting more and more generous. And you know why the rental discounts and concessions have been more and more generous? Because we have about 30,000 vacancies. And guess what landlords don't want? 30,000 vacancies. Because you know what that means? Then they can't provide for their families if their housing units sit vacant. It's a horrible business model to jack up the price of rent and have 30,000 vacancies. That makes 0 sense. And small business owners know how to run their businesses, unlike many of us. Housing is getting cheaper, in part because there's more of it. Whoa. Developers built about 20,000 new apartments around the metro in 2024 compared to about 13,000 the year before. So that's 17,000 more just in the Denver metro area. Meanwhile, it's getting easier to find an empty apartment. I just said this. Nearly 7% of metro Denver apartments, roughly 30,000, were vacant last quarter. While vacancy rates rose in every metro county, Denver saw the most empty units. All but 2 submarkets saw drops in rent. So tell me, if your business model is to jack up rent and coordinate with landlords when 30,000 vacancies are present, I would say that's a poor business model, and I don't think landlords are doing that. Vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to start out in saying I appreciate the bill sponsors engaging with me both on and off the mic yesterday. I've thought a lot about this bill since then, and an issue that has me stuck is an issue of due process. Under current antitrust law, there is a broad standard that the company mentioned and others like it are being challenged under. What this bill would do is say that that lawsuit's determination is, for the sake of Colorado, irrelevant. That we are adjudicating the matter now here by finding this company and others like it to be de facto in violation of antitrust. I went on the website of the company that was mentioned multiple times yesterday and reviewed it. It's a company that's been around since the late 90s. And I think that it's worth an adjudication in the courts. I don't think that it's something that should just be looked at on what is out there publicly available. I think we actually should have a real view that is held up to judicial scrutiny to say, indeed, these things are happening. Because I do believe that what is available, or what I found, and mind you, it was a cursory review, right? We have lots of bills, lots of things going on in this building. But I do think that one can make an argument that what is being offered is not violative of antitrust. And so for us to enter into this conversation, for me, without more information, without more detail, without assurance that these companies are indeed violative, that their business model is indeed violative of antitrust, circumvents due process in a way that I'm just not comfortable with. And so for that reason, I'll be a no.
Representative Kelty.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Going over this bill, and this bill included, we have 19 anti-landlord or housing provider bills that we have addressed so far. In my opinion, this is not by accident. What you need to understand, and I'm sure some of you do, that when you go after landlords and you make their lives so much difficult to the point where they have to raise prices, or they'll go out of business, you are hurting renters. I have a lot of renters in my district who I feel they need to have available housing. And this is the actual opposite. All these bills, including this one, is doing exactly the opposite of what you're intending to do. The puzzle pieces are coming together, bill after bill after bill. In my committees, we talk about not stacking penalties on criminals, not stacking fees, stacking. Yet, you have no problem stacking anti-housing provider bills.
Representative Kelty, please
Yes,
speak
ma'am?
to the bill before us, the policy before us. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Stacking anti-landlord and housing provider bills like this one. I wonder if the people understand and they know how this bill and all the rest, and how everything that we're doing in this House is making Colorado more unaffordable, housing less available, creating higher pricing for everybody involved, creating more problems that we were actually supposed to be fixing. And this bill is not fixing. This bill is causing problems. And that is something that we need to start looking at and taking seriously. I understand your intent is to help renters. But without housing providers, landlords, there won't be rentals available for them to rent. Not everyone can afford to buy a home, and it's important for them to be able to afford a home for their families. And if that means renting, then that means renting. But bills like this are going to do exactly the opposite. I ask for a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Representative DeGraff, this is your second and final time to speak to the bill. You have 6 minutes and 46 seconds remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just thought I'd find out something on these algorithms. So I asked an AI app, said, what is the average two-bedroom rental cost? And I gave a zip code. And crazy enough, it came back and said, due to Colorado law, I cannot give you that information. It's like, wow, that's fantastic, because now Colorado law is actually working, and it is not, so the whole AI system is not circumventing the imposition of the will of this body. And I thought that was, oh wait, no. I guess it just finally came up. It just took a little bit. So it gives the average apartment home, two-bedroom rental, in this zip code, 1627, 919 to 396, depends. Hot pads list things, 1564. Trulia mentions this, 1660 to 1650. It goes through an entire breakdown. I don't know why you would need an app for this. The market has already probably pushed those apps out of business or on their way. Because we know from talking about some AI bills that we've had, the AI has access to basically the entire internet. I think the quote was the entire internet as of 2 weeks ago. Everything has gone into that model to train it. So this has something that talks about training the AI. It's already done. It's done on a continual basis. This bill talks about consciously parallel pricing. Now we have thought crime. So we have thought crime in this bill. So now somebody has to go through and would have to prove to somebody and say, well, did you or did you not consciously? And so how would you prove that? How would you prove that you did or did not consciously coordinate? Did you both use AI? If two people type in the same search on here and get roughly the same answer, how are you going to answer that question? Now we have thought criminals. We're compiling data centers. We want to build massive data centers, massive amounts of energy, massive amounts of water, collecting all of the data. That's all going to be fed into AI. It's all going to be able to be used by these things because everybody's price, everybody's website, everything is going to go into it. And now we're going to turn it into a crime that's somehow enforceable. If a good intention was a good idea, it wouldn't need a gun. This is another good intention. And you put it into law. Eventually somebody has to enforce that law. That's law enforcement. They all have guns. What's lowering the prices? It says it in here. Goes down and it says recent market softening, 4.2%. Wow, that is something that's actually good for renters. The market is softening because the market responded to the extra cost, the high rent from everybody moving in and all the other things, and the market responded by building a lot of homes. And then the other side of the market is responding by leaving. And so now we're creating this bubble of homes that is going to drive down the cost, driving down the value of people's investments. Has nothing to do with the rental stuff. It has to do with overbuilding. That was known last year. That the number of properties that were being developed and then being tried to cram in by this idea of gently infill is going to lower the prices. No, that's just going to create a lot of problems and devalue people's investments even more. So we have AI, we have all this, you're creating a bunch of crimes for people. I don't know why the goal is. I won't speak to motive. I don't know why the goal is so strong to turn any law-abiding citizen in Colorado into a criminal. But that's all that this does. If you want to solve the problem, let the market solve the problem. This room has fouled up the market beyond anything recognizable. We're the 6th most regulated state, as my colleague mentioned. And then we're paying the price. So don't impose worse legislation as a solution to bad legislation. Get the body out of the market, free the market from the oppressive boot on the face of this body.
Representative Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
Hearing some of the arguments without any response got me a little hot on the collar, so I came down here. I'm one of the most concerned about the landlords being overly regulated on my side of the aisle, but this bill is about the free market. This is antitrust 101. And we say, well, we ought to let the courts handle it. The median antitrust action takes over 3 years. It was an 8-year court fight to get AT&T broke up, and they conceded because they saw the writing on the wall and took 2 more years to break up. And that was only about putting a few more dollars on someone's phone bill and stifling competition. This is about the most important part of anyone's budget, their housing costs. And when we see the writing on the wall and we know we have an organization that is conspiring to withhold supply, which they have admitted, in order to increase rents on renters, that's inappropriate. And the market does function, but anyone who thinks that real estate is totally elastic really shouldn't be in this body. It's inelastic in the short term. That's why it takes years. There's zoning regs everywhere. The market is not free in real estate, and it's not perfectly elastic. So when people are able to put together these algorithms to let a small select group with privately provided data in their own little group, and my understanding is the sponsors last year offered up You make the data that goes in there public data that anyone can access, we have no problem. That's all we'll ask. They refused because the system wouldn't work that way, because if there was free information, you have a free market. That's not what they want here. That's not what they want. They don't want a free market. They want to artificially restrict supply in order to push up the rents. They even admitted they don't like the landlords to negotiate directly with the renters. Theodore Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt were well known for protecting capitalism from itself. And we should take that when we're talking about protecting the free market. This is protection for the free market, and I urge an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1004 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Minority Leader Puglisi, how do you vote?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No.
Minority Leader Puglisi votes no. Please close the machine. With 43 aye, 22 no, and 0 excused, House Bill 1004 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1013.
House Bill 1013 by Representatives English and Bacon, also Senators Coleman and Exum, concerning social visitation rights for a person confined in a correctional facility.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1013 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1013. Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And like I said yesterday, with hearing this in committee, was a no in committee simply because of the liability and in making something a right that is a lot of times out of the control of the people working in this field. It puts an unnecessary liability, an unnecessary opportunity for litigation for an entity that's already struggling in this area. I think the things that we obviously support on this, it does emphasize parental rights. It does emphasize involvement of the family and keeping the family whole. And it's not the fault of the family that their family member is incarcerated. I know on different sides of this argument there is the ideology of, doing the crime, doing the time, but that doesn't necessarily need to fall on the families, especially as it pertains to kids and being able to visit with their parents or otherwise family members that are incarcerated. So I like what is going on and what the direction was taken by the bill sponsors and working with DOC and the employees of DOC and the communications that are happening, I appreciate. The only issue that I had still is that DOC, Department of Corrections, is still in a spot where they feel like this is going to cost them lawsuits. It is going to cost them money from litigation. So I can't get behind the bill yet. I hope it's able to be fixed in the Senate to where they can get DOC in a comfortable position on this bill. I do agree with what it's doing just as is and what it's opening up without certain accommodations or exceptions. I think it will open them up to a lot more litigation, a lot more lawsuits, and loss of money. So when we're already struggling to keep things working and operating at Department of Corrections in Colorado, I think we need to try to minimize that damage that can possibly happen to them in these situations that are out of their control. So I will be a no on this bill. However, I do hope that it does get to a good place when it gets to the Senate. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1013 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Minority Leader Puglisi, how do you vote?
I vote no. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Minority Leader Puglisi votes no. With 44 aye, 21 no, and 0 excused, House Bill 1013. Oh, I'll pause. Mr. Shebel, please close the machine. With 44 aye, 21 no, and 0 excused, House Bill 1013 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1285.
House Bill 1285 by Representatives McCormick and Johnson, also Senators Kipp and Pelton B, concerning the veterinary workforce and in connection therewith establishing requirements for the practice of veterinary medicine by veterinary professional associates.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1285 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1285 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Minority Leader Puglisi, how do you vote?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I vote yes.
Minority Leader Puglisi votes yes. Please close the machine. With 50 aye, 15 no, and 0 excused, House Bill 1285 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1213.
House Bill 1213 by Representatives Frey and Weinberg, also Senators Doherty and Ball, concerning changes to the medical assistance program.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1213 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1213 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Minority Leader Puglisi, how do you vote?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I vote yes.
Minority Leader Puglisi votes yes. Please close the machine. With 62 aye, 3 no, 0 excused, House Bill 1213 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1245.
House Bill 1245 by Representatives Leader and Hamrick, also Senators Kipp and Danielson, concerning HVAC infrastructure improvement projects in schools.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1245 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1245 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Minority Leader Puglisi, how do you vote?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I vote no.
Minority Leader Puglisi votes no. Stewart R. Please close the machine. With 43 aye, 22 no, and 0 excused, House Bill 1245 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1117.
House Bill 1117 by Representatives Joseph and Basenecker, also Senators Gonzalez and Weissman, concerning the regulation of vehicle immobilization companies.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1117 on third reading and final passage.
Representative Richardson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We discussed this a lot yesterday, and I just wanted to make one final point that this is a service that's focused on the parking areas that surround residential complexes. We're taking yet another tool away from those that manage residential housing complexes. We just continue to make it harder to do things for folks that provide housing. And well, I guess second point would be that outside of Colorado, these are known as Denver boots. These are kind of part of our heritage. Might not be one we're proud of all over, but it does put Denver on the map outside of the state. So thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1117 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Minority Leader Puglisi, how do you vote?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I vote no.
Minority Leader Puglisi votes no. Please close the machine. With 41 aye, 24 no, and 0 excused, House Bill 1117 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to Senate Bill 15.
Senate Bill 15 by Senators Cutter and Marchman, also Representatives Velasco and Morrow, concerning updating the Wildfire Information and Resource Center website.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move Senate Bill 15 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 15 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Minority Leader Puglisi, how do you vote?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I vote yes.
Minority Leader Puglisi votes yes. Garcia, Ricks. Please close the machine. With 65 ayes, 0 noes, 0 excused, Senate Bill 15 is adopted. Co-sponsors.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to co-sponsor.
Minority Leader Puglisi co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Shebel, please read the title to House Bill 1289.
House Bill 1289 by Representatives Zokai and Richardson, also Senators Weissman and Frizzell, concerning property tax exemptions for real property leased to public entities.
Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move House Bill 1289 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of House Bill 1289 on third reading, final passage. Mr. Shebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Minority Leader Puglisi, how do you vote?
I vote yes and would like to co-sponsor.
Minority Leader Puglisi votes yes. Please close the machine. With 65 ayes, 0 no, and 0 excused, House Bill 1289 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Minority Leader Puglisi co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to lay over the balance of the calendar till Thursday, March 27th, 2025.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow, March 27th. Are there any further announcements or introductions? Seeing none, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until later today.
The House will stand in recess until later today.